Welcome to the channel. Here's a look at what's to come. A quick diorama, 172 scale. Probably not the most realistic, but fun to build. 2 tanks from World War II, 2 kits, 1 box, all paints included, plus a resin part I bought separately. To complete all this, I had 3 days off work and put in around 20 hours altogether. This is the Airfix Classic Conflict Tiger 1 vs Sherman Firefly and some Airfix European City Steps. First off, it's worth saying, all these parts went together great. Clean-up of the parts took the longest, as it normally does. All the painting and weathering I done on these tanks were done with the paints included in the kit. I didn't go too much into detail with these being 172 scale, and the idea was to chill out a little bit. I have to remind myself sometimes that this is a hobby. It's quite easy to forget this and start getting stressed out when things don't go to plan with the build. Anyway, back to the model. The few holes I was just drilling in the turret with a 1mm drill bit, those are for these spare tracks. With this you get the option of the wheels and tracks separate, or the 2 halves like I used. To be honest, they look exactly the same as what the wheels and tracks separate do once put together. These weren't glued into place yet, I wanted to paint them separate. I started priming using a Humbrol grey primer. Before this I did give the model a wash in soapy water, get any grease off and make sure that paint sticks to it without any problems. I've become a bit of a fan of these small 172 scale models. Tanks like this and planes, I suppose, taking a lot less time to complete than your bigger models. You can always get one done between bigger projects if you fancy a bit of a change. This colour going on now is the matte brown yellow. I diluted all these paints down with Humbrol acrylic thinner. I done the tracks with gunmetal, and when it come to the camouflage I started with the wheels first. I had this stencil that I made a while ago. I used it to do the mottling on the side of a Messerschmitt BF 109. Just happened to be the perfect size for the wheels. Using a heavily diluted matte black, I went over the tracks just to tone down that gunmetal. I made a quick stencil out of a bit of card that I found. Airbrushing on the olive green first, and then the German camouflage brown afterwards. Normally I would use masking tape and try and copy the pattern. I did read somewhere that these tanks, some of them, were painted in this camouflage pattern on the battlefield, so I thought a stencil might give this effect, plus it was fun doing it for a change. Once the tow cables and tools were painted in gunmetal, and I just sat there and looked at the model for a little while, I heavily diluted some matte black with water. I went round the whole model with this to tone down the colours a little bit and let that black seep into the panel lines. I should really have done the decals before that last step, but not to worry. Once each decal was put in place, I went over the top with decal fix. Onto the Sherman Firefly. Putting the parts together I found the same as the Tiger 1, everything went together great. It was during building both these models together I realised how much smaller the Sherman was compared to the Tiger 1. I suppose the Tiger 1 was classed as a heavy tank, the Sherman being a medium tank, but the Firefly having that 17-pounder anti-tank gun. Apparently because of that the Germans were instructed to target the Fireflies first. Same again, a few holes to drill, some at the front, some at the back and side for the tools and spare tracks. As well as the spare wheels and tracks, there's a few ammo boxes and a jerry can to put on the front. This build took a little bit longer than the Tiger 1 because of all these small parts. I glued the spare tracks on the side before moving on to the turret. Took a few attempts of them falling off because I didn't want to put too much glue on. The turret was pretty straightforward, didn't take long at all. That was up until I decided to add a bit of cast texture. Using some putty mixed with extra thin cement, I went round just avoiding all the hatches, then gave it a good sand down once it had dried. Once all that was done, I started going over with the grey primer. Normally after this I would add some shadows using a matte black, but I just wanted to keep this build as basic and as simple as I could. No pre-shading, nothing like that, just the primer, then the colour. Now for the olive drab. Looking at the turret there, I think there's just about enough of that cast texture. I thought I might have sanded a little bit too much off, but looks alright. First time using Humbrol Olive Drab, and I quite like it. I suppose using grey rather than black primer for a change. It's more of a neutral base, so the colour on top's a lot more accurate. Time to stare at the model for a little bit before getting to work with that gunmetal on the tracks. I was very tempted to get the rust wash out, but I didn't. I kept to my original plan of just using the paints I got with the kit. With the painting, I'd probably say the matte black on the wheels was the most time consuming. Going over the tools and tracks with German camouflage brown. When it come to the tracks, I diluted this down a lot more. Not quite as much as I should have, but it doesn't matter. To tone this down, I just dry brushed a bit of gunmetal over the top. After a few more things to paint, like the metal parts on the tools. Unlike on the Tiger 1, I remembered this time to do the decals before the wash. Because I put the tracks in the way, I had to cut the two side decals in half, but they didn't look too bad. And same again, I used decal fix on these. On with the matte black, heavily diluted with water. This will get in between those panel lines, hatches, tone down that gunmetal on the tools, and just make that olive drab not look as clean. This was the last step, completing the two tanks. I coated both models with a Humbrol matte varnish. And there's a quick look at the Tiger 1 and Sherman Firefly before I get on with the Airfix European City Steps. First time doing anything like this, I wasn't too sure how I was going to do it. I knew I wasn't going to follow the instructions because I didn't have most of the colours. But I just started off by giving it a coat of Humbrol primer. I thought with what colours I've got, I can just make it up as I go along. So as far as the colour goes, probably not your everyday European City Steps. But as long as they look presentable by the end, I'm happy with that. I used Humbrol Pale Stone for this concrete part that's crumbling off the side of the wall. I thought surely I can't go wrong with painting stone with pale stone. I went around all the brick parts brush painting Tamiya matte white. The idea was mainly to get the white in between the bricks. So on this next step with a mix of orange and red, I can go over the top of each brick, leaving that white in between, hopefully giving the appearance of a brick wall. After this, heavily diluting matte black with water again, I went over the whole thing, just letting that matte black seep between the bricks, the cracks, the holes in the wall. Just a guess, but I'm thinking a wall in this state wouldn't be clean. I used heavily diluted deck tan to go around all the brick parts, gave it a couple of coats just to tone those down a bit. And once that was done, that was the brick walls complete. I'm quite happy at how they turned out for a first time. Off camera, I gave all the steps a coat of light grey. Then with a white oil paint diluted with odorless enamel thinner, I went around all parts of the main steps. And once done, I went around cleaning up any excess with enamel thinners. At the very end, I go over all these steps with a light dust pigment. I thought with the wall next to it being in that state, there's bound to be dust everywhere. The handrail was done in matte black. There was a few parts I had to touch up here and there where the oil paint had spilled over before I gave the whole thing a coat of Humbrol matte varnish. One thing I hadn't thought about was the floor. I did think it was a bit of a shame to put all that work in on the steps and tanks and not have a floor. I did think about styrofoam, but then I seen this plastic sheet with brick imprint at the local model shop, and for £3.75 I thought that'll do. Job done. And there it is. Maybe not the most accurate, but it was fun. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please give a like. And for those that are subscribed, I'll see you next time.